Hello, everyone. This is Ernie Humphrey, the CEO of Webinar. Oh my gosh, that's my bad. Let me try that again. Too much talking. Hello, everyone. This is Ernie Humphrey, the CEO of Treasury Webinars. I'm thrilled to have you join us for our featured general session, The Social Leader, Empowering Performance Across the Enterprise. I really started on a topic probably about 2 years ago called the Social CFO, and I know I need to expand that to the Social Leader. And what that's all about is that Treasury and finance leaders are being expected to impact performance across the enterprise. And most of us by nature are not social animals. And so I really have tried to offer folks some advice. These leaders who are not necessarily social by nature, specific tactics, and some really valuable tips from folks that have had success. And this conversation has gotten even more interesting given what we've all had to experience through COVID and how we've had to learn how to be social, right? We've all had to learn to be social in a remote environment. So I'm thrilled to have two amazing leaders with me today. So first of all, we have Jason Lin, who is the CFO at Centage. They are a leading FP&A provider solution, amazing solution. So Jason, welcome to the session.
Thanks, Arnie. Happy to be here.
And then we're also thrilled to have all the way, well, we're virtual now, all the way from South Africa, Jan Burkus. He's the group treasurer at MultiChoice. Jan has had an absolutely fascinating career, including being in internal audit. So I give you good kudos for that. So Jan, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Annie.
All right, so let's go ahead and kind of tee up our discussion a little bit. I'll just give you a little bit of agenda, and then I'll let these guys give us a little bit about their backgrounds before we dive in. So we're gonna talk about, what is a social leader? What's the concept? I'll ask each of these gentlemen, how they've evolved into a social leader. So sometimes it's not natural. Sometimes you find out what works and what doesn't, and also ask them specific things that they've used to engage their teams as COVID continues to provide us all challenges. And then we'll talk about specific ways they've been successful in empowering their treasury and finance team. So that'll be fascinating. And then we'll go talk to them about how to collaborate beyond, right, treasury and finance across the organization with your fintech partners, with your banks. And then we'll offer up some closing thoughts. So before we dive in too far, Jan, why don't you just give us a little very brief overview of your background and focus more on your most recent role, and we'll go from there.
Perfect, thank you. And good evening out of Johannesburg to all the listeners. Yes, Annie, I'm a qualified chartered accountant. I also have a master's degree in forensic accounting, which stemmed from my internal audit stint that I had at my previous employer, as you rightly mentioned. So beyond internal audit, I've also spent 4 years on the M&A space before heading into my first treasury role. That I followed for 5 years before joining MultiChoice in 2018, and I've been group treasurer at MultiChoice since then. So it's been quite a journey to get where I am, but it's been an exciting one, nevertheless.
Yeah, Jan, why don't you give us also just a little bit about what you guys do at MultiChoice, because it's really fascinating.
Perfect. Yes, so MultiChoice is the leading pay TV entertainment company across Africa. Across the continent, we've got close to 21 million subscribers. We've got a presence in roughly 50 countries. We also have a European headquartered technology company called Irdeto. They specialize in online security and connected Internet of Things. So it's quite a broad spectrum that we deal with. And especially dealing with treasury in Africa, I always say it will keep you humble and on your toes. There's never a dull moment. So yeah, that's primarily our business, and we look to give our subscribers obviously great content, great local content. Sport is a big offering for us. So we've got a great sports offering across the continent, and it's really to give our subscribers as much value as we can.
Great, thanks, Sean. And Jason loves anything that'll help keep my ego in check, because he says it gets out of control sometimes. All right, Jason Lin, CFO from Centage. Why don't you give our audience just a little bit about your background and what you guys do at Centage?
Sure. Thanks, Ernie. And again, thank you everyone for kind of participating, and very happy and honored to be here with Ernie and Jan. But yeah, I'm Jason Lin. I'm the CFO at Centage Corporation. We're based here out of slightly outside of Boston, Massachusetts. We provide a cloud-based software platform called Planning Maestro for financial planning, budgeting, and analysis to the SMB and mid-market. I've been a corporate finance professional for over 20 years. The last 10 years really focused in the tech space. So for those of you that are in the area or know Boston, have been in a lot of local Boston tech companies like TripAdvisor, Monster.com, and most recently ZoomInfo. I'm an FP&A guy at heart, and a big believer in FP&A being seen as a leadership organization within companies. So Ernie's topic today is very near and dear to my heart.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. And so what we'll do, we will kick things off we'll talk about how to be social, and note to the audience, I'm not going to really go through the slides per se. I'm going to leave them up. And just kind of let you kind of read those as we go along. I have a tremendous opportunity to talk to these amazing gentlemen, so I'm not going to waste it with reading off slides for a change. And so Jan, let me start off with you. So most treasury and finance people are not social by nature. Were you always social by nature, or is that something that you needed to develop over time?
Look, I think we work too hard. That's why we don't have time to socialize, right?
Right.
But I would like to think about it more in the lines of connecting than socializing per se. I think it's critical both on on the pure finance side as well as the treasury side, to connect with all your business partners. So it's definitely been a learning journey, from kind of being a youngster all the way to where I'm now. I think you definitely get to learn how to deal with different personalities, which is a key thing. That definitely does not come on day one. So, as I've progressed through my career, and especially, once I joined MultiChoice, which was a much bigger organization, I made a point of it to engage with all the heads of finance as quickly as possible. It was very important for me, for them to get to know me and for me to get to know them. And also, what their business entails. And over that, it's kind of developed further in terms of, what's their need, where can we add value, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's definitely a must-have skill. Don't be, or allow it to grow over time, so it's definitely not something that comes naturally to everybody, but the value behind it is unprecedented.
Thanks, Sean. Let me kind of follow up there just a little bit, because some of our folks here, they know they need to do it, and you've been successful in doing it. And what you said is really important to me. And I actually said it on other sessions today. It's important to let people get to know you and get to know other folks. Can you share with us just a few ways that you actually do that? Is it just a conversation? Take people out to lunch? How would you approach someone who you've been told isn't really the most social by nature person? Any success tips would be great.
Yeah, I think you must, make some effort to try and get to know that person. Yeah. How does that person operate? And, typically when you're heading down to get a coffee, if you see that person, if he or she is available, invite them along, get them a coffee, and just get general kind of chat going. I think that's been the most effective way of people connecting. You don't always have to do it in the formal space. Yes, we've got formal meetings set up with all the kind of the heads of finance on a monthly basis to make sure that we touch base. We share info, and similar they with us. But every opportunity you get to informally engage with somebody is valuable, and that's how you build up kind of relationships along the way. And some you need to give a bit more time than others. You'll get those conversations that are just spontaneous, right? And others that you just need to work a bit harder on. But it's definitely worthwhile, and you have to do it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ernie, I love
Go ahead, Jason.
I love what you guys are saying right now. I mean, this really resonates with me, and I think the key of what you and Jan are saying is, I think the initial connection should be on a personal level. This is my personal belief, right? So, my approach is, I don't want my first meeting with you, Ernie, or with you, Jan, to be us drilling into your budget requests, right? I want our first interaction to be over a cup of coffee talking about our kids or talking about the football game last night, right? So,
Absolutely.
and to answer your question, Ernie, I personally will kind of force feed that. Like everyone's got a phone now. I've got a million. I'm that toting dad who's got a million pictures of my kids on my phone and weekend activities, right? So I'll show folks that hard to crack nut. I'll show them pictures. These are my kids. This is what we did this weekend, and just try to get generate some conversation that has to do with everything outside of kind of work and the task at hand.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
Go ahead, Jan.
No, I fully agree with that, right? I mean, you need to have the ability to, have a fair amount of football banter, as we do within a lot of teams on the multi-choice or soccer, depending kind of where you are in the world. And yeah, I mean, share those personal stories. At the end of the day, you're working with people, right? I mean, it's not robots, so that personal connection, people get to know you a little bit. Next time around, the other person's going to ask you, how's it going with the kids, or what's happening. So and that's where you want to be.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Jason, let me pivot your way first this time. And so obviously with COVID, it's changed the way that we communicate. We have to communicate a lot more in a virtual manner. Can you share with us some of the things that you've done to make sure that you're staying engaged? I know it's probably a little bit about frequency, but what are some of the other things that you've tried to do to stay engaged, not only with people at your company, but with people within your team?
Yeah, I mean, we're living in kind of a very different world in general now, but I think with COVID and the pandemic and really the rise of remote work, it's just a new landscape. But I mean, I try to bring things that we did in the past to this, to this current environment. I mean, you guys, you can still buy people lunch or buy them a drink digitally, right? You can send people, you can pick up the phone and or go online and order lunch for your team. You can send people digital drink cards at Starbucks. So I try to do a lot of that, and I just try to make sure it all comes down to you said it, right, frequency of the communication, right? So Jan mentioned we're so busy that I think that if I didn't put in reminders in my calendar to pick up my head from my work, like I could maybe go a whole entire week and not talk to certain people on my team. I try to make a mental note to never let that happen, right? If there's no reason for me to call my staff accountant for work, I just call them to check in to see how they're doing. Hey, I know your kid, I know your son started first grade. How is that going? I know that your husband, your wife wasn't feeling great the other day. Are they feeling better? So those types of things I've found make a big difference.
No, thanks, Jason. I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, really what you said, what really kind of popped out to me was that you need to make time to do it, but you also need to schedule that time and remind yourself to do it, just because it's so important that you do that. Now, Jan, I know it's hard to go second on a question like that, but do you have anything else that you can add, or things that you've tried to do in this digital world or virtual world?
Yeah, no, I mean, a very similar approach on my end. So, I've got a dedicated Tuesday morning meeting set up with my team, where we go through kind of all the to-dos for the week and get updates on those key things. But then for my direct reports, I also have a monthly general catch up with them, so it's just me and that person. And then for the rest of the team, I have quarterly sessions with them as well. So I make sure that, during the year, I've, get specific time with these individuals and allow them the opportunity, to talk to me on a kind of a one-on-one basis. My team knows that, I'm always available. They don't have to wait for a formal appointment or kind of meeting, to talk to me. If there's something pressing, they can just reach out, whether it's via a WhatsApp, whatever case. I mean, I'm available to them. And then, something else, and, kind of Jason, touched on it briefly, is, also make time for fun. I think it's one of the things I miss the most, is the kind of the energy of the office. So a little bit kind of difficult in how you do it, but I've got a kind of a quarterly pub quiz set up with my guys. So We've got a kind of a 2-hour slot in the diaries. You know, we've got a whole bunch of questions, kind of a little bit of friendly competition, you know, laughs along the way, and it's a good time for the team just to kind of, you know, get away from kind of normal work and just, you know, kind of have those laughs. But you know, you need to have that kind of time for that informal connection. I mean, it's so important. You know, you can't just, you know, have the kind of, you know, work nonstop kind of hamster wheel syndrome, as I call it.
All right, thanks, Sean. So let me pivot just a little bit, and I'll give you the first swing, or the first kick at this one, if we want to talk football style. And so what about your? Let's talk about your customers and your bank partners. What has changed for you with them since COVID? Have you communicated more or less with them? Have your banks done what you expected? Have you had to speak more with your customers at all, Jan?
Not really. I think, you know, we've kind of kept to what we've been doing. Obviously now it's just on a digital basis, you know,
Right.
kind of at the start of COVID, yes, we did, you know, initially kind of, you know, obviously reach out to banks to understand, you know, kind of any pressures on their side, you know, how's the kind of working environment, etc. But, you know, with that all being, you know, kind of stable, you know, we still have the same kind of modus operandi on that one. You know, we've being a listed entity, we've got, you know, 2 formal results calls for the group in a year, and then post that we set up one-on-one sessions with all our banking partners, which they really appreciate. So, you know, allows them to kind of ask the questions which they may not necessarily have been comfortable to ask, you know, within a group space. And then this year as well, kind of from a treasury team perspective, we set up similar calls with all our banks in terms of just giving them some insight as to where our focus areas are going to be, you know, what it is that we are looking to, you know, where are the challenges, and, you know, giving them that transparency so that they can kind of align the efforts and the engagements that they bring our side. You know, and for me, in terms of customers, I see our business units as my customers, you know, similar basis. You know, it's making sure exactly, you know, what they're working on, where we can add value, which is a big thing for me. Quite passionate about it. If you think treasury is just an operational cost center, you're missing the plot completely. You have to add value to your business and to your business partners. You know, so that communication has continued. Was a little bit kind of more frantic, uncertain in the beginning of COVID, but, you know, now it's kind of second nature.
All right, thank you, sir. Jason, let me pivot just a little bit on that with you. And so this kind of the first part is going to be the same question. Have you communicated more with the Centage customers, or with sales about your customers? And then secondly, on a kind of different note, I know you can remember both, but that's my second thing that just really popped in my mind was that you and I had talked before. Could you speak to the frequency of interactions that you have had with your CEO and maybe C-suite and board since COVID has hit?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, I think that for us, one thing that, and I'm sure that you guys have, and people listening have heard, is that what the pandemic really did for us certainly is it shined a light on the things that you should have been doing all along. I mean, everything that we're talking about, you know, make sure that your team is engaged, make sure that you're constantly communicating with your team and with customers and with bank relationships. Like, all of those things we should be doing anyways, right? And I think that the pandemic just made it very apparent that if you weren't doing something that you should have been doing. So yeah, I think at Centage, there was increased communication with our customer base, where a lot of our customers are in the SMB, and the SMB was certainly impacted by the pandemic. I mean, think about a regional fitness club or gym, right? And when the shutdown hit. So there was a lot of outreach. We actually set up kind of an executive leadership customer sponsorship program, where we were reaching out to folks and just checking in. Hey, how are you doing? How are you guys holding up? Do you need any relief on your payment terms, or are you good? That type of thing. And got a ton of positive feedback from our customers on that. Again, comments like, these check-ins are great. We should have been doing this all along.
Yeah.
Right. So, things like that. And then Ernie, from a CEO and board perspective, I think it just ramped up the frequency of communication. You know, I think what I mentioned to you was, you know, in the past, where we may have been looking at our forecast or monthly, right? You know, I was sitting down there during Q2 of 2020. We were looking at at weekly forecasts with our CEO. Our boards who are generally very, very high level and kind of talk to me about your 2-year plan. They got very, very compartmentalized where they said, set aside the full year plan. What does the quarter look like, right? And constant check-ins on the quarter. So yeah, definitely an impact on both fronts.
Okay, great. So I do want to touch on before how we switch gears. Jason's like, you always say you're switching gears, you're all over the place. So I do want to touch on the value in storytelling and telling the story behind the numbers. And so Jan, I know you've had a lot of experience, right, in audit and in forensic accounting. And this is kind of a general question. I don't know if it's a good one or not. Can you tell us how storytelling is important? Is it important to tell the story behind the numbers, and how does storytelling maybe has helped you build consensus when you're trying to drive initiatives?
Yeah, I would almost kind of rephrase it as, the story portion or the story portion, frame it as making sure people understand the why, right?
Yeah.
If you can effectively communicate the why of, what you're trying to do, it makes buying a lot easier instead of you just, rambling on a topic, and you might, completely lose your audience along the way. So in terms of, keeping it concise, to the point, and you have it quite, clear in terms of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve. If you can, get it across, you're halfway there. Especially, I've kind of learned over the years, dealing with, executives, typically people that don't want to sit in long-winded presentations, etc. So if you come well prepared, you know what you want to say, the facts, you kind of work through this thing, anticipating what questions you may get, and you can answer that effectively. You're a long way there. So, definitely something to practice as you go along.
All right. Thanks, John. Jason, why don't you give us some of your thoughts and best practices on leveraging the art of storytelling?
Yeah, I think what's super important for me, and from what I've seen, is making sure, and I love the first bullet there, authentic and honest, right? It's just being transparent and telling a story. I think in finance, a lot of the times, if we try to, the challenge for us is aligning that story with what the story that maybe our operational business partners may tell. And sometimes you see that disconnect between kind of the operational and strategic story and the story that the numbers are telling an auditor or an investor. So I think bridging that gap and making sure that those stories are aligned is incredibly important. And I think that you do that with authenticity, right, and transparency. So.
All right. Thank you so much. And so let's pivot a little bit about, obviously success is very important for your team. And I think that being able to engage your team obviously has a social element to us. And we've talked about this a little bit. I know that some folks struggle with letting people get to know them and getting to know your team. But before we go there, I have to ask, Jan, let me pivot your way first. What are the most important skills that you look for when adding members to your team? And have those skills changed as you progressed in your career at all?
For me, it's always been team and culture fit, number one. It's always been number one on my list. I've never kind of budged on it. You can always train missing technical, kind of skills or knowledge, but you can't train somebody to be kind of, fit into your team or the way your organization works. So, I've always spent quite a lot of time in, kind of in terms of the interview to try and get as much of that out of the person that we are interviewing, and sharing how we work as a team and as a company, and try and get a sense of who this person is, how would he or she react in different scenarios, and whether that fits into our team dynamics. And once that box is checked, kind of normally, yes, there's a kind of a base technical skill that you're looking for, but you can always upskill somebody once you've got the correct team fit. So that for me, priority, and I think it will probably stay priority for the rest of my professional career.
Okay, Jan, let me follow up on that a little bit. It sounds like you probably hire for this a little bit more for this than some, which is amazing. So there has to be instances where someone might not have what we call the soft skills. How do you help folks develop in that area? Is it through experience, conversations, Are there specific things that you make them do, like present? How are some things that people can help people really work on their a team member soft skills if it's just not inherent to them? You have anything you can share with us there?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it, Ernie. It's exposure, right? It's giving people exposure to different scenarios, to different environments, dealing with different people. And then also very important, is be there for that person. I mean, it's something that you build up over time. So you definitely don't want to ask somebody junior, listen, come and present to this meeting. The CEO or the CFO is going to be there, and kind of throw them, to the fishes, and leave them be. You're there, you support them. If you see they're kind of struggling a little bit, you kind of come in, prep them beforehand in terms of typically the things you kind of want to avoid, you want to do, and just try and give your team and people as much opportunities as you can. I think it's a big thing in terms of leading a team. There's a big responsibility, to it. I see it really as a privilege and an honor to lead a team. It's definitely there for me to give back. So whatever you've experienced during your career, give that back. Allow people to grow, and kind of guide them along the way.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. That's amazing, and kind of why I do what I do is I've had the opportunity to talk to hundreds of treasury and finance professionals, and I'm trying to do this, to do just that, share what I've learned, but also bring in amazing folks like yourself and Jason to share your thoughts and experience as well. So Jason, let me ask you, what are the skills that you look for, and then what do you do to help develop the soft skills in your team?
Yeah, so I mean, Jan took a lot of the words right out of my mouth. I mean, I can't, just echo what he said, but also, I look for a natural drive and curiosity, a curiosity to learn the business outside of just the finance numbers, right? So, I think Jan said it, but those types of things are harder to teach, right? It's, I think it's easier to teach someone, technical accounting or, how to build an Excel model versus teaching someone how to have that natural curiosity and hunger. And so yeah, that really jumps out at me. And then as far as helping folks build the soft skills, for me, I like to start at, kind of self-awareness and just asking a lot of questions to say, hey, look, that meeting that you ran didn't go, did that meeting go the way that you wanted it to go, right? And there's some reflection there, right? Like, no, it didn't. It seemed like it went off the rails. And then asking questions like, you know the numbers, the story like the back of your hand. Why do you think that it didn't go the way that you wanted it to go? Well, maybe I didn't have command of the room. Maybe I went too deep where I shouldn't have, or maybe I should have. And those types of things, that type of acknowledgement to say like, boy, like, I do need to work on the soft skills piece of it. I can't just rely on knowledge of the numbers. I mean, I think when you have that acknowledgement, that's kind of the foundation, and you build from there.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. A lot of what you just said resonated, and the meeting piece is especially important. I actually have a session on that, how to avoid meetings that lower your IQ. So how to lead a meeting and not have someone's IQ drop, but also yourself, right? How to not attend every meeting that you're asked for. And so meetings lower IQs, and we all know that is a dangerous game. So Jason, I'll let you start this time. So in terms of employee engagement, you kind of touched on how you do that. Now, most people don't. If you don't, I don't know if you do or not. Do you formally measure that, or how do you qualitatively do that? Or what are some things that you're looking for when I say, Jason, is your team engaged? What kind of comes to your mind? I think of this, and this is how I kind of, if nothing else, measure it myself.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great question and a great challenge, quite honestly, that a lot of leaders are and organizations are faced with today, right? But to answer your question, we do formally measure it. We do a company-wide quarterly employee survey where we're asking a lot of kind of questions that help us kind of try to put some metrics around employee engagement. But aside from that, I think that for me, I just, again, I ask a ton of questions of my team.
Right.
I have a very small, lean but mighty finance team. at Centage, and I take the time to ask the questions. I think you had on one of your previous slides, truly listening to folks, because I think if you truly like, I tell myself this, like, call someone, ask them how they're doing, and step away from your computer, and don't be typing up an email as they're responding, right? Because if you listen to folks and you hear the cues, right? You can hear, oh God, like I'm so worried about the fall with my son's school starting and what that work schedule is going to be like, or oh, I can't deal with this working remotely anymore. My computers. So you hear these cues that rather than typing an email, be like, yeah, that's great. Okay, so like, hey, dude, should we talk about a flexible work schedule for you in the fall? Like, I don't want you to have any anxiety about that. Do you need a new, like, how is your home office set up? Do you need some help there? So I think asking questions and really opening up your ears and like truly listening to what folks are telling you has helped me.
Yeah, I love your listening. I should have touched on that earlier. Jan's like, you have a session on everything. I do have a session on effective listening. So when I was back in corporate treasury, probably still the best session I've ever been to, the VP of sales came in and talked to us about how to listen. Most people think I haven't learned that yet, but I try. I do my best, but that's extremely important, all the things you mentioned. So let's touch on engagement just a little bit more. Since diversity and inclusion is so important. So let's just tap dance in it in a little bit safer area. What about across generations? So do you engage people in different ways? Is there anything you can share with success that you've had and how you engage people maybe in different generations that you've had experience with?
Yeah, I mean, so again, I one thing about myself, and folks will tell you this, is I'm a pretty self-deprecating guy. So I've found that humor and poking fun of myself has been an effective way, right? Because especially respectfully when I'm talking to the younger generation, I'll just be like, I'll make some out of the box comment like, well, yeah, that's, I'm getting older and older by the day, and I don't know. I used to do my homework on the way when I was milking the cows or something like that, right? So just I think humor has been really helpful, and I think it gets people to kind of open up and join in on the fun, and it starts a conversation out of a place of respect where you get to learn about that different generation.
Yeah, I think that's important. What you just mentioned is you have to show that you care about what matters to them, and I think that's incredibly valuable. So Jan, so let me bring you in here on this topic a little bit. So first, let's go back to the overall topic of employee engagement. Is this something that you formally looked at have looked at formally? If not, how do you kind of assess that yourself as a leader?
Yeah. So we make use of a tool called Office Vibe throughout the organization. So every 2 weeks, there's a short little kind of survey questionnaire that comes out. It's normally just like 5 questions, so it doesn't take people long to do. And based on answers, there's kind of, I think there's 8 or 10 kind of defined categories of feedback, how the questions is structured, and people answer. And you get an overall kind of engagement score that is calculated based on how people answer. So I've got a dedicated kind of hour-and-a-half session with my team every month just on that, and that's the only thing that we focus on. So I every single meeting I tell the guys, yes, I mean, there might be a formal KPI kind of set against the score, but it's not against the score. It's about identifying the gaps, and addressing that and actually doing something about it. So we go through all the questions, we look at the typical responses, which comes through anonymous, which is also a great thing. So I think people have a lot more comfort in typing up comments, etc. And if there is something that's either got a negative answer or a slightly negative, or where you can spot a gap, is you sit down and you chat with your team, right? I think that's where, for me, in terms of kind of having that candor environment within your team, allowing people to give their opinions in a safe place, if I can put it like that, to bring it up. And if they don't want to do it in the team meeting, give them the invitation to reach out separately. Right? I think that's the critical thing, and that Jason touched on it. It's one thing to identify something; it's completely different conversation to then actually act upon it, and try and make things better. So I mean, and that for me is a big game changer in a team. As soon as people see you genuinely care, you know, and you connect with them on that level, you know, things normally change for the better.
Yeah, Jan, let me follow up on that a little bit. I'm very interested in you been doing this formally. Jan, are there general things which you are surprised that people are more happy with or less happy with, or can you share with us areas that people see? You know, is there anything you can share with us? You know, that you've learned that people seem to care more about than you might have thought right before you started using this tool? I think that'd be very helpful.
Well, when we were still in the office, there was quite a clear distinction in terms of who enjoyed the open office culture and who didn't.
Yeah.
You know, so that's always quite a tricky situation to
Sure.
address. But we try to find practical solutions.
Right.
You know, so we kind of identified that as a key thing, and then we did a further deep dive. And then, you know, you throw it back to people. It's one thing to and I don't kind of want to use the words complain about something.
Right.
It's another thing about, you know, out of your own also putting some solutions on the table. You know,
Right.
so we threw it back to the people. So, okay, guys, so we've identified this, we are aware of this, but, you know, give us some ideas. What do you guys think can work and not work? You know, and then we kind of went back and we worked around that. And before we actually could start implementing some of the changes, we've got COVID and working from home now for a good year and 8 months. So, you know, unfortunately, we haven't changed all of that yet. But you know, it's typically, you know, some of the kind of softer things. It's not necessarily, you know, I need better hardware or those type of things. It's, you know, work environment. I think, you know, was a big focus. You know, all of the time.
All right, Jan. So let me dive in on engagement a little bit different than I did with Jason. So it seems to me like you, I'm sure, have had to master the art of engaging folks across borders, probably across the entire world. Can you share with us probably like how many countries or continents you've had to do that with? And do you have a different approach in engagement? Are there things that work across the board, or do you have specific things that work with certain people from different areas of the country?
No, I've you know, from my perspective, I've tried to keep things fairly simple.
Yeah.
You know, for me, and we've touched on it, you know, people need to know who I am, you know, who is Jan, you know, and I'm the same, you know, at all times. So whether I'm engaging with colleagues in, you know, in the Netherlands or colleagues in Dubai or Kenya or Nigeria, you know, they get to meet the same person, you know, so the same effort that and dedication that we give to our colleagues in SA, we give to everybody else. You know, and you know, and that's how it should be. You shouldn't have almost kind of, you know, multiple corporate personalities, if I can put it like that. You know, stay authentic to yourself, and you know, people know exactly what they get.
All right, amazing. So I've got my favorite slide on. I think I've shown this slide like in every single session, but company culture, departmental culture, I think is tremendously important. These 8 areas I've learned from all my conversations, opportunities. We've talked about all these. You need to offer opportunities for your team to have personal growth, professional growth. You need to have the right environment for value and ethics. Positive environment. You need to establish that accountability across your department. You have to let people know really what their professional value is, right? Your value for them and how they can build that. Honest, constructive feedback, and also that honest praise. So Jan, let me start with you. Of these 8 areas here, which one of these to you has the biggest impact, and why?
I mean, it's on top of the list, and I think it will always be, it's communication.
Yeah.
You know, if you work in an environment where, you know, your executives communicate clearly in terms of, you know, what they expect of you, you know, where the company is going, you know, what it is that we're trying to achieve, and you have that within your team as well. I mean, it's a big winner for me. You know, without that, you know, if people need to start guessing in terms of, okay, well, are we really kind of contributing overall, you know, why are we, you know, kind of doing certain things? I mean, communication is the foundation of all of it. You know, and, you know, give people a voice, you know, so it's not just about, you know, me communicating with my team. You know, I mean, typically when we do our annual strategy, it's a big thing for me in terms of, you know, we sit down as a team. I say, listen, guys, here's some high level thoughts in terms of, you know, I think where we need to focus, and we debate it, you know, and you walk away with a strategy where everybody's aligned. everybody is on the same page in terms of, what are we trying to achieve, not just kind of within treasury, but how it feeds into the wider business. So that for me is beyond anything, it's definitely the most important.
All right, thanks. Jason, let me go ahead and pose the same question to you. Just kind of dive in on one of these areas that I have here and just give us your insights onto why it's really important to you and your team.
Yeah, Ernie, this is a great slide. I see why it gets a lot of play. I would say that if you want a successful organization, you need all of these things on this slide, right? It's difficult to pick one. Absolutely, communication probably is at the top of the list. If I had to pick a 1B to me, it's that top left, the personal growth and professional growth.
Yeah.
I think that we as leaders, for the folks on our teams, we have a big impact in that, right? And we need to be there for them in that top left corner. I'm sure folks know this, that meeting, that career discussion meeting is the easiest meeting on the calendar to push, right? We're too busy, like, let's do this next week. And it's a very specific meeting. It's not your weekly one-on-one check-in where you're talking about, well, this is what we have going on this week and next month.
Right.
This is, where do you see yourself in 2 years? What do you want to be doing? Where do you see your career going? Such important conversations. And I just think that, at the end of the day, we all love our organizations and where we work, but we do this to provide for our families and to grow our careers, right?
Yeah, well, I think I'm glad you mentioned that, because most people, employees that I know, and I was the same way, we dread those conversations. So as leaders, we have to make them feel like this is your opportunity, right? We're vested in your professional success. Tell me what you need. Tell me what you want to do. I had people that I talked to that I told them that it's time for them to move on to the company. And they're like, what? I said, no, I said, I want you to make an impact. And they were surprised. But getting people to dread makes you sad, right? When your employees don't want to take ownership of their professional growth. At least that was a perspective that I had as well. So Jason, I'm going to come back your way. So I really didn't touch on this enough with you two amazing gentlemen. So let's talk about professional development. Jason, can you share with us just a little bit about how you stay on top of your professional game in terms of not only being a CFO on the soft skills, but on the technical part? And, how do you manage your own professional development?
Yeah, it's an investment, right? It's a time investment. I think it takes constant time, preparation, and research and learning, right? I love the stories of, you're never too old to learn something new, and I try. I'm a big believer in that. So, so it's setting aside the time, and for me, I've always made an effort to learn about. You had a question on the demographics, Ernie, but learn about the different generations, what makes them tick, right? Learn about different cultural backgrounds. You're a global organization. You probably have to do this every day and understand the different regional differences and holidays and things like that. So, it's setting aside the time to make sure that you're looking at that piece of it.
Okay, I'm gonna hit you with Dr. Phil. Jason, what is Jason's biggest professional weakness, and how does Jason work on it?
I think that for me, I'm the social piece of it, the being social, and I'm a natural extrovert. And I think that for me, it's understanding that not everyone is, and specifically when you talk about within finance, I think there are some introverted people who want to just send out the reports monthly, and I think having the respect for that as well, and that's been kind of the learning and challenge for me, is that I see a lot of value in, like I said, in that drive and that curiosity to push forward. But I also have had to learn to acknowledge that, hey, look, a team is filled with players and role players, right? So not everyone, in reality, not everyone can be that your superstar rock star, right? You need your core players and your role players as well. So I think that's come gradually over the years.
Yeah. Okay, great. Now, Jan, I'm not going to torture you. I'm like that. I know Jason. That's why I did that to him. And so, Jan, can you share with us how you drive your professional development on a personal level?
Yeah, for me, it's having that honest conversation with yourself, right? Where's the gaps? What do you really want to develop? And funny enough, one of them has always been public speaking, and it's been a strange opportunity that COVID's offered to do these engagements on a digital basis, right? So, yes, there's kind of an audience on the other side, but at least gives you slight reprieve of not walking into a room filled with faces looking at you, right? So it's building blocks. And then, whatever I, kind of look at, where I want to develop, it has to add value to my kind of day-to-day. It does not necessarily have to be a formal skill. If you look treasury specific right now, kind of digital currencies, all of those type of things, is exceptionally, topical, and it gets quite complex, So my base case has always been, to try and get myself to a place where, I don't expect myself to be an expert in a specific matter, but really to give me that ability to have an intelligent conversation with somebody that is, and understand it, and then see, okay, can this be kind of deployed in a value add to the business, so kind of just always take it one step further. It's fine to have kind of, general things that interest you, which is great, but as soon as it becomes specific, you have to tick that box, is this going to kind of, add value to my kind of daily activities? If not, then maybe look at something else.
All right, amazing. All right, let me go ahead and I'll share my my key takeaways, and then I'll let these two gentlemen dot the I's for themselves. And so for me, kind of what I've heard as well is there's tremendous value in being authentic and honest. And Jason really hit on this. I didn't enough. Listen, 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 right? I know we've heard these themes throughout. Know your team, know your colleagues, right? Know your customers, right? Let them get to know you. So that authenticity really drives your social engagement, which really everything else kind of comes from there. And so, let me start with John. Hopefully, we have hundreds of treasury and finance leaders joining us today. Share with us just maybe 1, 2, 3 things that you want them to do. Right? If you can get 1, 2 things out of this session, based on my experience, this is the most important for you as a treasury leader.
Yeah, I think on for me that's exceptionally important is to have a service mindset.
Yeah.
Not just to your customers, but to your team. I once had a conversation, and one of my team members asked me, why are you spending so much time on this? And I asked him, if you're not willing to invest in your team, don't expect your team to invest in you. Show that you truly take your responsibility with with the kind of necessary importance that it needs, and think about you can always kind of, not to be somber, but people think about when you die, what do you want people to say about you at your funeral? Similar thing, when you leave an organization, what do you want those people to say about you? What type of leader were you for them? And then allow people to grow, allow people, make sure that they know it's okay to make mistakes. As long as you learn from them, it's fine. And don't micromanage people. I mean, it just suffocates everybody. It's a big pet hate of mine, because then you don't give people that growing kind of opportunity. And then, as we've kind of mentioned before, is communication. Having a kind of a candor operational framework, with, even if it's just within your team, but kind of installing that sense where people can voice their opinions on things with the clear distinction that it never gets personal. It's about the topic, and once you walk out of the room, you can have a coffee and talk a bit of smack about what's happening on the football on the weekend. So yeah, I think those are the kind of the 3 key things for me.
All right, thank you much, Sean. So I would have to say that if I had a mic, that would be like a mic drop, Jason. So I'm sorry you have to follow that. That was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But I always make it
Yeah.
hard on Jason. Sorry, Jason.
Yeah.
So Jason, why don't you give us a few of your key things to share with everyone?
Yeah, sure, Ernie. And yeah, that was great. Yeah, and I won't be able to top that, but I'll just chime in with two quick points here. I think what I would tell folks that are listening is don't be afraid to find your own voice and your own style as a leader and as a social leader, right? And also to put in the work to find your own style, because we talked about authenticity, and it's not going to be authentic. You're not going to be true to yourself if you try to copy someone else. What works for me, what works for Ernie, what works for Jan may be different than what will work for folks out there. So don't be afraid to find your own voice. And then the last thing, don't be afraid to continually adapt and evolve and reach outside of your own personal comfort zone, right? It keeps things from being stagnant, right? And I think it shows those around you who look up to you as a leader that you're willing to put in that effort to put yourself out there. So those two things have really helped me as I've kind of gone on this leadership journey.
Thank you so much, Jason. My job is fun, but it's never more fun than getting to have a session like this and picking the speakers. And I know Jason, but I'm gonna have to buy Mike a beverage because Jan, you are incredible, just as you are, Jason. So Jason and Jan. So thank you so much, everyone, you for taking the time to join me. I know people really appreciate your insights. They're priceless. So appreciate that, gentlemen. So thank you so much. Also want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us for the session, but also at the 2021 Treasury and Finance Virtual Forum. As always, everyone, knock on my door and I'll answer it. Make the rest of your day great, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Ernie.
Yeah.